Once you've got them sheared off, care after that's extremely important. One of the most important things is you need to keep them out of the sun. So during the daytime hours, you need to keep them under shade, and that's especially important with the lighter colored steers, especially those that are white, either Charolais or Shorthorn, or even some of your Hereford cattle. You can get some sunburn on their feathers. And even some of the black-hided cattle that if it's a real sunny, warm day, those cattle may blister and you get some sunburn. The problem with that is, one, it can be painful to the steer, and so if there's sunburn and you go into the show and you've got that on that steer, he's going to be very sensitive to the touch. The other thing is, just like in humans, when you get some sunburn, they're going to peel and they're going to start flaking. And that flaking and dandruff is not eye-appealing in the show ring as well. So make sure that once you shear those steers off for the slick sheared show, during the day, night's okay, but during the day you make sure you pull them up and keep them in the shade and out of the sun, because they will sunburn with that. Other thing that's important is care of that hide. What do we use to clean them with? Typically we'll use, as far as shampoos, a lot of the show supplies have a lot of good products out there. As far as shampoos, there's, whether you be Weaver or Sullivan's or any of those other show supplies, you can use some different shampoos that are on the human side as well. Just need to make sure that you're not using some products that may have some things like lidocaine in it or something else that are more of a medical type treatment that you could end up with having some residues in that animal. So a lot of different options on shampoo with that. Even dishwashing soap is an option as well. Joy has been around forever, and a lot of people use that. I prefer using Joy if you've got one that's real dirty and you're trying to shear it for the first time. But typically Joy is going to strip more of the oils. Your dishwashing soaps are going to strip more of the oils out of their hide. And so probably refrain away from using those after you've sheared those animals off, because they're a little more aggressive and can take away from that. We will use a little bit of vinegar, pour a little bit in a bucket, fill that bucket up with water, and pour it off the top of them after we've rinsed those calves out. And that seems to help with the dandruff a little bit on them as well. When you're washing them with soap, you don't have to scrub them with a scrub brush. If you use a scrub brush like this, or even a rice root brush, a lot of times their hide's very sensitive, and just like the human side, and if you brush them like that, you can get some streaks and marks in them. I like to have a separate brush, which is a very soft bristle brush, and utilize that brush when I'm shampooing or brushing them off as well with that. So shampooing, nothing fancy with that. There's a lot of good products out there for it. One of the most important aspects on slick shearing and hide care is making sure that your steers are free from any kind of external parasites. And that could be lice. So as we move into December and January, we will see some lice in these cattle, and that can be in shorter haired cattle or in long haired cattle. And when those steers get the lice, they start itching, they start rubbing on everything, and you really will affect the hide. And if you're not on top of it, they will rub some bare spots that will not grow back. And sometimes they grow back and there may be a discoloration in the hide, and it just looks splotchy and it doesn't look as good with that. So making sure that you're on top of lice during those months. You can go in and you can do various different things in lice treatment. You can use a spray. What works good for our family is that we utilize a product, Lintox, and we put about 1 ounce of Lintox in a foamer with our shampoo, and we foam that steer all over, making sure that we get up under its belly and its flank area, up under its arms, everywhere. And we let that soap and that pesticide soak into that hair and do its working for about 5 minutes, and then we rinse that product out. And you can do it a couple times a month. Typically will make sure that you stay on top of and control that lice and stay ahead of it to where they're not going to have some problems with that. The other parasite that we have a lot of problems with, and this is probably more important for our shows that come around into the fall, because those cattle are going to be fed all the way through the summer when we have the peak fly season, and it could be face flies or house flies and even horn flies. And so keeping the flies off of those cattle helps the performance of them because they're not fighting the flies all the time, but those flies will also bite them. And what you will see is if you let those steers get heavily infested with flies, when you come around a month to 2 months later and shear them off, you're going to see some hide damage, and the hide damage could be from rubbing or something like that. But oftentimes what we will see is a lot of bumps on them, and those bumps are very prominent, and they just take away from that the look and the condition and the feel of the hide. So making sure that you control those flies prior to shearing is important, and then also after. And so for flies, you can use some spray-on products. The best way is management in the barn, either feeding some feed-through larvicides products, keeping things clean, keeping the feed picked up, keeping the manure hauled away. All of those are important aspects in making sure that you control the fly population. You can use a wide variety of different sprays on them as well, but make sure you take care of the fly population prior to shearing them. After you shear those steers, especially when they're warm during that fall, and even when we move into San Antonio and Houston, we will see some challenges with flies after we've sheared them. And you can get some bumps and just irritation of the hide with that. So make sure you utilize some kind of fly control on them to make sure that those cattle are not irritated, their hide's not irritated. So parasite control, I can't stress it enough, that's important. Sometimes we'll get some fungus issues on these cattle, especially in their underlines or if it's muddy conditions, and you got to stay on top of that. And there's a number of different anti-fungus products that you could put on them. So, the big thing is watch your cattle, managing them, those cattle, rinsing them several times a week, so you can really, see what their hair's doing, what their hide's doing. You're keeping it clean, you're keeping it moisturized, so that you don't come up and you shear them off and you've got a lot of problems. And it just takes away from the show ring appearance of those steers.